In this video, I'm going to look at a Flask app that does a session log on. So it's going to ask the user ask for a logon name, username, and password. And this time, before I did it just to see if they were at the logon page, but now I'm going to actually compare the username and password to a small set of username and passwords and again, allow them over to a welcome screen if they properly logged on, but not otherwise, and have another session variable that is going to sort of have an error message of what kind of mistake was made, and a third session variable that's going to count how many bad attempts there were, and then sort of lock them out, not any sort of behind the scenes locking them out, but at least for the duration of this session, lock them out. So they'd have to start a new session. Okay, so let's run it and then talk about it a little bit. So here's the command, here's what I'm running, and Flask run. And I will start at this time. And I have a logon form route and a welcome route. And I cannot, if I try to go to the welcome route without having logged on, it's sending me back to the logon. So I tried this button, you can see navigates to welcome. And if I just try to change the address to welcome, I get sent back to the logon because there's a session variable. If that session variable doesn't exist, it's sending me back. Now I'm going to try to log on. Fred is not one of my users. And I'm just making a password that doesn't exist because Fred doesn't exist. And I log on and it's telling me that it's a bad username and my error count is 1. I'll show you Groucho is one of my usernames, but if the password's bad, that was a bad password, then it says entered bad password and my error count is 2. I'm going to go back to Fred and this password. And now my error count is 3, and I'm also locked out of the password. And the password has an input requirement on it. So I'm just going to tell me that I didn't enter a password. And so it's not really getting me off of this page because so my error count's not going up, but I'm also not really able to have any more attempts unless I had a new session. And then let me just start a new session and have a proper stop it and start it again. And now let's say a Groucho is one of my users and his password was swordfish, and he can log on and get to the welcome screen. Okay. So let's see what we've got. In terms of form, there's a string field for the username. The input is required. It has a length more than 4 or more, between 4 and 30. There's a password. It's a password field. You must enter something in the submit field. So that's the form, nothing terribly interesting. The logon form is going to tell you if there is a session error, what it is. So this is what was set telling me bad username, bad password or something. I don't necessarily want to do anything like that. It might be bad security, but just to show the sort of things that one can do. And then it's prompting you for the username. It's just showing you the errors. So this is the prompt for the username, and here's the username. Same thing for the password label and password, and then the submit button. And then here's me trying to navigate to welcome. But again, if I haven't logged on, welcome sends me back, but that's in the routing. The handler is just the what I was calling the welcome page. So it just says, hi, the username. And I have an else that says bad, but I shouldn't be able to get to this page if I don't have a username. And then all the real work is in the app, is the routing. Bringing in the form from that other file. I have a session, I have a redirect, I have a request, I have a URL for. Here are my usernames: Groucho, Chico, Harpo, and Zeppo, Swordfish, Piano, Silent, and whatever are my usernames and passwords. My secret key. The default route redirects to the logon form. The logon form uses the Flask form, logon form that was extended the Flask form. And if we submit, then one thing I do is I say, if there is not a count in the session, so I have session as a set of key value pairs. If count is not in that session, then make a count and give it a value of 0. This is going to count my attempts, or my bad attempts, that is. So I'm going to ask if the result username, that's what the user entered, is in usernames. I'm going to get the index of that user and then compare it to the, and then compare that password. So, well, here's the if the username is in there, and then here's the else, and that means the username was not there. So I'm incrementing my session count, plus equal 1. I'm setting the session error to enter the bad username, and also this is what I'm going to display. So I'm also adding the count, turn the count into a string and add it to this message. So it's going to say that it's a bad username and that the count was 1 or 2 or whatever. And this is just printing in my console also what's going on, bad username. So that was if the username was in the list of usernames. I'm going to do this stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to say, and it was bad. If the username is there, I'm going to do a search to get the index of the username. I'm going to check the password that the user entered versus the password with that index that I just got. If I get in the username and the password, I have good credentials. I'm setting the username session variable to the result and redirecting over to the welcome page. Otherwise, I'm incrementing my session count, and I'm saying the error this time was bad password, and also printing bad password here in the console. And then I have here, no matter which kind of error I made, bad user or bad password, I have down here, if the session count is greater than or equal to 3, I am setting up a render KeyW, a keyword. So I'm sort of, I didn't have any, my password didn't have a render KW. Over in forms, there was no password, had nothing there, nothing of that sort. But I sort of get it started, and then specifically, I set the disabled property to disabled, and that was that graying out of that password box, so the password box was getting cleared. That was just happening. But now it's disabled, so it got cleared and disabled, so I can't put anything in there, and I have to put something in there, so it sort of effectively stops me, at least until I sort of end the session and start a new session. And I need a new count. Okay. So that was that. Okay, and this all takes me to the logon form. Um, Here's me trying to get to the welcome form. If there is a username in session, that means I had a good log on above. Then I go over to the handler, which was the welcome screen. If not, I'm going back to the user form. So a successful logon takes me over to welcome and sets up a user name in my session so I can sort of personalize things on the welcome screen. I'm personalizing it only by saying, hi Groucho at this stage, but there could be more personalizations. Um, but the session is remembering whether I logged on properly or not. So if I try to get to welcome without having logged on, it sends me back. And I have some logic of logging on, and I've increased the number of session variables to say what kind of errors are occurring, not just did I get a good user log on, but I'm sort of identifying what kind of error happened and also counting the errors and using that to disable something to sort of prevent some further logons to prevent too many attempts. Okay, so just some more playing around with this idea of logging on in session. Thanks for your attention.